Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shruti taken. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namasabhabhya sabhapatibhyascha vo namaha. Vagishadhyas sumanasas sarvarthanam upakrame yannatva kritakrityas yastannamami gajananam. Sharada sharadam bhojavadana vadanam bhuje sarvada sarvadasmakam sannidhim priyat. सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् शास्त्राब्धिपारदृश्वानं सङ्गहीनं तपोनिधिं भजे श्रीभारतीतीर्थगुरुं भद्रौघदायकं विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विधुशेखरभारतीं श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानामालयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। श्रीमते शङ्करार्याय धीमतेऽद्भुतशक्तये नमोऽस्त्वद्वैतसिद्धान्तस्थापनोपात्तमूर्तये जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्तिषु स्फुटतरा या संविदुज्जृम्भते या ब्रह्मादिपिपीलिकान्ततनुषु प्रोता जगत्साक्षिणी सैवाहं न च दृश्यवस्त्विति दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत् चण्डालोऽस्तु स तु द्विजोऽस्तु गुरुः इत्येषा मनीषा मम. Let us do the chanting of this one more time. जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्तिषु
जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्तिषु जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्तिषु
स्फुटतरा या संविदुज्जृम्भते
स्फुटतरा या संविदुज्जृम्भते स्फुटतरा या संविदुज्जृम्भते
जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्तिषु स्फुटतरा या संविदुज्जृम्भते
जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्तिषु स्फुटतरा या संविदुज्जृम्भते जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्तिषु स्फुटतरा या संविदुज्जृम्भते
या ब्रह्मादिपिपीलिकान्ततनुषु
या ब्रह्मादिपिपीलिकान्ततनुषु या ब्रह्मादिपिपीलिकान्ततनुषु
प्रोता जगत्साक्षिणी
प्रोता जगत्साक्षिणी प्रोता जगत्साक्षिणी
या ब्रह्मादिपिपीलिकान्ततनुषु प्रोता जगत्साक्षिणी
या ब्रह्मादिपिपीलिकान्ततनुषु प्रोता जगत्साक्षिणी या ब्रह्मादिपिपीलिकान्ततनुषु प्रोता जगत्साक्षिणी
सैवाहं न च दृश्यवस्त्विति
सैवाहं न च दृश्यवस्त्विति सैवाहं न च दृश्यवस्त्विति
दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत्
दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत् दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत्
सैवाहं न च दृश्यवस्त्विति दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत्
सैवाहं न च दृश्यवस्त्विति दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत् सैवाहं न च दृश्यवस्त्विति दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत्
चण्डालोऽस्तु स तु द्विजोऽस्तु
चण्डालोऽस्तु स तु द्विजोऽस्तु चण्डालोऽस्तु स तु द्विजोऽस्तु
गुरुरित्येषा मनीषा मम
गुरुरित्येषा मनीषा मम गुरुरित्येषा मनीषा मम
चण्डालोऽस्तु स तु द्विजोऽस्तु गुरुरित्येषा मनीषा मम
चण्डालोऽस्तु स तु द्विजोऽस्तु गुरुरित्येषा गुरुरित्येषा मनीषा मम चण्डालोऽस्तु स तु द्विजोऽस्तु गुरुरित्येषा मनीषा मम.
Okay, so that is the shloka. The Padacheda Jagrat Swapna Sushuptishu Sputatara Ya Samvit Ujrumbhate Ya Brahmadi Pipilekanta Tanushu Prota Jagat Sakshini Sa Eva Aham Na Cha Drishyavastu Iti Dridhaprajna Api Yasya Asti Chet Chandalaha Astu Saha Tu Dvijaha Astu Guruhu Iti Esha Maneesha Mama. One more time. Jagrat Swapna Sushuptishu Sputatara Ya Samvit Ujrumbhate Ya Brahmadi Pipilekanta Tanushu Prota Jagat Sakshini Sa Eva Aham Na Cha Drishyavastu Iti Dridhaprajna Api Yasya Asti Chet Chandalaha Astu Saha Tu Dvijaha Astu Guruhu Iti Esha Maneesha Mama. So, as I said yesterday, each of these shlokas will talk about a different Mahavakya. As I also said yesterday, we will also kind of do I said I would also explain where the meaningful breaks in the lines would be. So, as per that, Jagrat Sapna Sushuptisha Sputatara Ya Samvidujjumhate Ya Brahmadi Pipilekanta Tanushu Prota Jagat Sakshini Saivaham Nacha Drishya Vastu Iti Dridhaprajna Yasyasti Chet Chandalostu Satudvijostu Guruhu Ityesha Maneesha Mama. Is how the meaningful reading of the shloka will be. Why we will see now. So, first let us start with the Mahavakya. Prajnanam Brahma is the Mahavakya. Prajnanam means Chaitanya. Consciousness is Brahman. Prajnana is the Chaitanya that is experienced by every single being. So, right? So we all are cognizant, we interact with the world, we see, we listen, we hear, we think. We are able to do all of this because we are. So that quality of conscious that is characteristic of existence is called prajnanam, and that is said to be Brahman. So where do we see that? Here in the first line we have the word samvit. Samvit is a paryaya pada, a synonym for prajnanam. And then later saiva aham, in that aham in this case means Brahman or the pratyak chaitanya. So when we say ya samvit, sa eva aham means aham eva samvit. And when aham means Brahman, then you have prajnanam Brahma laid out in this first shloka. The next ones are a bit more easier. For example, the next one, aham brahmasmi, you have brahmaiva aham. That's how the shloka starts. Right? So we can go like that as the shlokas go on. But here we have prajnanam Brahma. So now it begs the question, what is prajnanam? So prajnanam is, as we said, it is samvit. What is the characteristic of that? Bhagavad Pada is saying, Jagrat Swapna Sushuptishu Sputatara. It is clearly evident in the three avasthas of Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti. Right? So these are the three avasthas. Avasthas are avasthiyate anaya or avasthiyate asyam. That is an avastha, the state of existence. Jagrat, literally the waking state. Swapna, the dreaming state. Sushupti, the state of deep sleep, right? Supti means sleep. When you put in a su upasarga, because the upasarga ends in ukara, the sakara will get shakara. So you have supti becomes sushupti. So a state of deep sleep. The lakshanas for each of these avasthas are: in the Jagrata avastha, all indriyas are functioning. The antarindriyas and bahyendriyas are functioning. In the Sapna avastha, the bahyendriyas are not functioning, but the antarindriyas are functioning. In Sushupti, neither the bahyendriyas nor the antarindriyas are functioning. Those are the characteristics of each avastha. So the antarindriya is, of course, the manas, and also the indriyas like chakshus, shrotra, jihva, ghrana, as well as the bahyendriyas such as vak, pani, pada, payu, upastha. So the jnanendriyas and karmendriyas. So the karmendriyas being the vak, the tongue, the faculty of speech, pani, the hand, pada, the foot, payu, the excretory organ, and then upastha, the genitals. So these five are the karmendriyas. The jnanendriyas being chakshu, shrotra, jihva, grana. So chakshu, the faculty of sight; jihva, chakshu, shrotra, the faculty of the auditory capacity; then chakshu, shrotra, jihva, the faculty of taste; grana, the olfactory sense; then chakshu, shrotra, tvak is the capacity to touch, of sparsha. It is worth noting that these indriyas are not the physical organs. So the chakshus is not the eye per se. It's not the eyeball. It is the faculty of sight. Because there are those who have the physical appendage, but yet are incapable of the actual ability of sight. Right? So people that are visually impaired or something like that, or even as simply as an example as when we close our eyes, right? The organs are there, but the ability to see is not there. So the ability to see is characterized as the chakshus. In the same way, shrotra, jihva, grana, all of that. And then in the sapnavastha, the karmendriyas do not work, but the jnanendriyas do their work, which is why in a dream, we have the capacity of touch, taste, smell, sight, we have all of that. But obviously, when you are in a dream, you are not running anywhere. You are not, you're not eating anything. You're not actually tasting the thing that you are tasting in the dream. You're not actually going to the places that you are going to in the dream. You're not actually hearing the things that you are hearing in the dream. So that state in which the karmendriyas are inactive, but the jnanendriyas are active is called swapnavastha. And then in Sushupti, neither the karmendriyas nor the jnanendriyas have any function, but it is just the Atma layered by avidya that remain. So this samvid, this prajnanam, this consciousness is putatara, very clearly ujrumbhate. It spreads forth, or it is existent, it is evident. How sputatara, very clearly in all three of these avasthas. Because Bhagavad-pada says in his Bhashya, at no point in time does anyone say, I do not know myself. I am not aware of myself. No one says that. Because if they do say that, Acharya very nicely says in Swatma-rupanam, the person who says that is the person that is aware of saying that. So, in all three of these avasthas, the Chaitanya that is very obvious and is ready to be experienced is what is termed as Prajnanam. And then we say, so that is one half of the Mahavakya. What is this? Brahma. I think we talked about this in the Sadhana Panchakam class. So Brahman is a Nakaranta Shabda. When used in the sense of Paramatma, it is Napumsaka. Brahma, Brahmani, Brahmani, Brahma, Brahmani, Brahmani, like that. When used in the sense of Chaturmukha Brahma, the four-faced Brahma that is born from Vishnu's Nabhi, and the Srishti, the consort of the husband of Saraswati, there it is Pumlinga. So you'll have Brahma, Brahmano, Brahmanaha. That is that vibhakti that you will have there. But in this case, Prajnanam Brahma, it is a Hrasva there. So what is the nature of that Brahman? Ya Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanusha Prota Jagat Sakshini. So this Brahman is that which is Prota, that which is woven In what? Brahmadi pipilikanta tanushu. Tanu is body. In all bodies, from Brahmadi, starting from Brahma, pipilikanta, up to an ant. So that which is woven into all bodies, ranging from Brahma here being Chaturmukha Brahma, to an ant. Right? So Chaturmukha Brahma being what we call Hiranyagarbha, the first jiva, right? The greatest of jivas. An ant being a very small, very short-lived, very transitory being. So regardless of what the being is, regardless of what the upadhi is a vessel, regardless of the vessel is, it is prota in that, right? We have the famous mantra, ya ota protascha vibhav prajasu. Ota prota, I think a very common translation in English of that is the warp and the woof. This is actually a weaving term. So when you're weaving, you have one strand that goes this way, and you'll have one strand that goes this way. So those two ways of things being woven in are called ota and prota. It is used regarding Brahman to mean that it is existent in every single part of this. So wherever you look in a cloth, you will have a thread. There is no part of the cloth that exists without the thread. In the same way, there is no part of this, prapancha, there is no part of this world that exists without Brahman woven into it. So it is that same Brahman that is prota, woven into all beings, starting from Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma, up to a pipilika, up to an ant. But just because this Brahman is woven into the world, does not mean that it takes part in the world. So for example, whenever the pipilika dies, whenever the ant dies, Brahman does not die. Whenever a human is growing up, Brahman does not get older. Whenever a human is sad, Brahman does not get sad. Whenever the ant is hungry, Brahman does not get hungry. It exists as Jagat Sakshini. It exists as the witness to the world. Meaning it exists through all the Jagat's functions, but it itself is not disturbed by the world's functions. Right? Who do we call a Sakshi? Even in a case, right, in a court case, a Sakshi is someone that is watching what has happened, but actually has nothing to do with what has happened. So in the same way, Brahman remains as a witness to the world without taking part or without being affected by the Jagat's actual activities. So one thing we have to note here is, there is one prayoga in Sanskrit called Yat Tat Prayoga. So it is of course very common. Those of you that have gone through basic Sanskrit know how to use it, right? So Yat is that which, Tat is that. So these two have to be used together. For example, he whose father is Dasharatha is Rama. Yasya pita Dasharatha saha Ramaha. If you say, that land where Gandhi was born, that is Bharata Desha, right? Yasmin Deshe Ramah Jataha Saha Bharata Desha. That country in which Rama was born, that is Bharata Desha. So there will be two clauses. In one clause, some form of Yat Shabda will be used. In the second clause, some form of Tat Shabda will be used. And what this shows is called Samanadhikaranya. That is the technical term for it in Sanskrit. So when two things, when X and Y refer to the same thing, same entity, X and Y are said to have Samanadhikaranya. So if we say Shyamaha Ramaha, Shyama means dark, Rama refers to the person, right? So because there is a figure, the word Rama refers to a figure, and Shyama, the word dark in color, refers to the same figure. These two words are said to have Samanadhikaranya. Or if we say something like Sadhvi Kanya, Sadhvi means good, Kanya is a girl. So if we have someone in mind and both of these characteristics refer to that, then those two words are said to have Samanadhikaranya. So what this Yat Tat Prayoga does is it gives us Samanadhikaranya. So whatever is referred to with Yat, the same entity will be referred to as Tat. It is called Purva Paramarsha, referring to that which has been touched upon before. Para Mrishyate means to be touched. So Paramarsha, that which has been touched upon before, is now picked up again. So the reason I bring this up is because if you see in the second pada, it starts with Ya. In the third pada, it starts with Sa. So Ya means that samvit, Ya samvit, that samvit, which is clearly springing forth in the Jagrat Swapna Sushupti avasthas. That samvit which is woven into all bodies from Chaturmukha Brahma all the way up to an ant. That samvit which is the witness to the worlds, that is Jagat Sakshini, Sa eva aham, I am that. So what this prayoga does is, the entity that was talked about in the first two padas and the entity that is referred to as aham in the third pada, that ya, sa, what it does is it reinforces not just conceptually but also grammatically that these two are the same entity. So it is a very common turn of phrase in Vedanta. This comes through all through Dakshinamurti Stotra as well. Brahman will be talked about through Yat. The Jiva will be talked about via Tat. And then once you have Yat and Tat put together, it shows that the Jiva and Brahma will be referred to as the same entity. So in the same way, we have the first pada acting as a definition of what Prajnanam is. We have the second pada acting as a definition of what Brahma is. And in the third pada, we have Saivaham. So it is not just recognizing that Brahman is Prajnanam, but is recognizing that I am that Brahman which is Prajnanam. So it kind of brings that Mahavakya full circle, applying it to the individual. And it is not just saying that I am that Brahman, but also it shows the Vyatireka as well. Nacha Drishya Vastu. I am not the Drishya Vastu. So Drishya means Drisha Vyaptam Drishyam. So in Vedanta, the entire cosmos is classified into two things: Drik and Drishya, the seer and the seen. There is no third entity that exists. Everything is either a seer or seen. The seen, anything that is seen, is Maya. The Drik is always and in every case Brahman. Drik Drishyo Tau Padartho Dvau Paraspara Vilakshano. There are two things in this world called Drik and Drishya. One sees, one is seen. Therefore, they are Paraspara Vilakshano. They have conflicting. They're opposed by nature. They have conflicting natures. Why? Because the person that sees is constant, unchanging. The thing that is seen is impermanent, changing, etc., etc. So therefore, Drik Brahma. So therefore, the Drik must be the Nitya Padartha, which is Brahman. Drishyam Maya Syat. The Drishya, the thing that is seen, must be a product of Maya. So thus it is put forth in the Vedanta Dindima Stotra. So Nacha Drishya Vastu, I am not that which is seen. Therefore, by process of elimination, I must be the Drik. Because the Drishya Vastu has no Chaitanya of its own. We will talk about this more when we get later. Bhanti Svato Chaitanaha. We will get in the fourth shloka, right? Yad bhasa hridayakshadeha vishayaha bhanti svataha achetanaha. They of their own nature are achetana. They are without chaitanya. So the drishya padartha, its quality is, it is not known unless there is a drik. The drik does not need another object to be experienced. The drishya needs another object to be experienced. Right? So the drishya vastu is not my swarupa. Nacha drishya vastu. So iti, thus, yasya dridha prajna asti. He who is resolved thus firmly. So what is this resolve that we are talking about? That Brahman, which is stretched across all beings as the witness of this world, that Brahman which is clearly present as prajnana across all three avasthas, I am that Brahman and I am not the drishya jagat. Thus, whoever thinks, Satu Chandalostu, let him be a Chandala, Satu Dvijostu, let him be a Brahmana. It does not matter. Guru, who? He is a teacher to me, he is a guru to me. Esha Maneesha Mama. This is my firm resolve. This is my holding. This is my mata. This is my opinion. Right? So basically, in the end, the Ityesha Maneesha Mama says, this is my conclusion. So it shows us that this is what Bhagavad Pada thinks. What does he think? Such a person, let him be a Chandala or a Brahmana, is a guru to me. What kind of a person? Someone who has a dridha prajna. Dridha chasa prajna, dridha prajna. Prajna is a mindset. So a dridha prajna is a firm mindset. A firm mindset that what? So what is such a guru? What is the firm mindset of such a guru? That aham na drishya vastu. I am not part of the jagat. And sa eva aham. I am that. What is this that which? So that which is the ya, that which is present in all the avasthas, that which is present in all bodies, that which is the witness of the world, etc. Okay, so at this point we have a rudimentary understanding of the meaning of the shloka, right? So hopefully we understand the word-to-word meaning now. Jagrat Sapna Sushuptishu. Within the Jagrat Sapna Sushupti avasthas. For those of you who are interested in grammar, there's actually a very interesting note that was once made by the Pandita Maneesha Shastri. So, as for those of you that has heard his name, Maneesha Shastri is a very eminent Vyomasanskrit scholar and a Vedanta scholar. So, if you see, we have these are all these are all krit. These are all krit padas. What is a krit? A krit is the result of making a dhatu into a noun. Right? A dhatu being a verb root. Whenever you make a verb root into a noun, into a pratipadika, into a noun root, that the pratyaya that is attached to do so is called krit. For example, if you have, I don't know, if you have lyu pratyaya and you add it to nandi dhatu, you get nandana. Or if you have nini pratyaya, you will get grahin, like this. So grah dhatu, by adding nini pratyaya, becomes grahin. Or if you have things like this. So that same process is applied here. For sup dhatu, right? For the dhatu to sleep, sapati, you add the ktin pratyaya and you get supti. Right? The ktin pratyaya is what is called a bhava pratyaya. So a bhava pratyaya, the meaning that it ends up conveying is the act of. So whatever dhatu you add a bhavarthaka pratyaya to, you will get it as the meaning or the act of. So for example, you have a chinta dhatu, right? Chintayate. When you add a bhava pratyaya, you get chintana, right? The act of thinking. Or you have gam dhatu, you make it a bhava pratyaya, you get gamana, the act of going, or gati, the act of going. Or you have smra dhatu, you add a bhavarthaka pratyaya, you get smarana or smriti, the act of remembering. So in the same way, supti means the act of sleeping or the state of sleeping. So shupti, the state of sleeping well. In the same way, you have the same thing for sapna. There is, I think it might be an Aunadika Pratyaya, or maybe it is in the Krits as well. But Jagrat is actually very interesting. There are 6 dhatus called Jakshatyadaya Shat. There are 6 dhatus that have a particular form. They all will have the reduplication, Jagrat, Jakshat, like that. They have an honorary status of carrying the Bhavartha form. So there he said that, very few people know this, but he said that this Jagrat pada is found in that Gana. So you don't have to worry about this in terms of the meaning of the actual Panchaka itself. Just know that the Jagrata Avastha means the waking state, but it's an interesting aside for those of you that are interested in grammar. Sphutatara means clearly, samvit. So here you have vid dhatu, vid to know, and then samvit, knowing well. So samvit means jnana, right? It is usually used not in the form, not to mean just any knowledge of laukika padarthas, but it is samvit is usually used to mean brahma jnana. But here it is used to mean pure chaitanya, pure consciousness. Ujrumbhate literally means to stretch. The jrumbha means to stretch forth, which is why jrumbhate on its own actually means to yawn, because the mouth opens, widely when we yawn. So jrumbh is meant, the dhatu itself carries the meaning to, I think it's like angavitane or something like that in dhatu pata. But ujrumbhate means to spread forth, to open to a greater breadth, because the samvit exists in its pure unadulterated state. Once it enters these avasthas, it spreads forth across its various jobs, as across its various duties. Because there are 2 types of jnana. There is savishayaka jnana and nirvishayaka jnana. Savishayaka jnana is cognizance with an object, of an object. Nirvishayaka jnana is cognizance that exists without an object. So it is very hard of us to conceive this, because generally we will see a book. Then you have pustaka vishayaka jnana, jnana that has the book as its object, or you see some vigraha vishayaka jnana. It is jnana that has a vigraha as its object. It is very hard for us to even envision what nirvishayaka jnana would look like, what jnana without an object in it would look like. Which is why a lot of yogis have said, right, each thought that we have has some vishaya in it, because you think of something. There is no such thing as a thought without an object. But if we can have a thought without an object in it, that is existing in a very pure state of mind. So there are several yogis who say that the space between one thought and another is moksha. The space between one thought and another. So that split second between which the mind flickers from having one object in mind to another object in mind, there is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second in the middle, wherein the mind exists but without any object in mind. And of course, Chaitanya exists then too. So in that split second, moksha is experienced ever so quickly. Right? So that is the kind of meaning of samvit and what ujrumbhana means. So it is spreading because it is spreading across all these thoughts. It is spreading across all the things that we experience. It is spreading across all the things we bring to memory. It is spreading across all the things that we interact with as the Chaitanya that fuels all of that. And then in the same way, ya brahmadi pipilikanta tanusha. I said before, brahma chaturmukha brahma, adi beginning with, pipilika is an ant, anta ending with, tanu is a body. So starting from brahma and up to an ant, in all bodies, tanusho satyame bhavachana, prota, that which is woven in, jagat sakshini, that which is the witness to the world, saivaham, I am that. So in this, as we have seen, the prajnanam brahma mahavakya is brought out. Prajnanam in the first pada, what is Chaitanya, how does it spread across these avasthas? In the second pada, we have what Brahman is. Now, if we go one more step into seeing exactly what the mechanism of Chaitanya spreading across these avasthas is. So, our identity as a Jivatma is very simple. Right? Because we have mainly, it is called Chit Chatur Vidya. Chaitanya exists in 4 different forms. Brahman, Ishvara, Kutastha, Jiva. Right? So we have Brahman, Ishvara, Kutastha, Jiva. Brahman is Chaitanya without the touch of Maya. Ishvara is Chaitanya with the touch of Maya. Kutastha is the Jiva's Chaitanya with the touch of avidya, or Chaitanya with the touch of avidya, and the Jiva is the Chaitanya with avidya factored into the equation. So what does this mean? Maya, though it be Brahman's own Shakti, it gives Ishvara an upadhi. Right? Ishvara being the Chaitanya, it gives Ishvara an upadhi. In the same way, the Jiva too, because the Jiva being the microcosm of Ishvara, has his own upadhi. So Maya is the Karana, Avidya is the Karya. Avidyopadhiko Jivaha, Karanopadhi Ishvaraha. Ishvara has the Karana as his upadhi, as Maya as his upadhi, as his reflecting medium. And the Jiva has the Avidya as his reflecting medium. So what happens is this Chaitanya gets reflected through the Antahkarana, the Antahkarana being the inner organ. When the Chaitanya that is inherently one and universal gets passed through the medium of a particular Antahkarana, that Chaitanya within that Antahkarana develops the Ahankara of a Jiva. So basically it's like having a source of light, and that source of light passing through many different lenses. Each lens that the light passes through attains a different ahankara. So when the pure Chaitanya, the Samvit, passes through the lens and everything that the lens itself interacts with, it goes through all the avasthas, but without the root Chaitanya, the lens itself is powerless, right? The example is another example given in Shastra is that of a microscope, or not really a microscope, I suppose, but a magnifying lens. Right? The lens on its own does not do anything, but when sunlight or the rays of the sun are passed through the microscope, they attain the ability to burn or interact with the environment around it. So even otherwise, the sun's rays would still be falling on the grass or the leaves or whatever, but they do not really interact with that thing as much. However, the second it passes through the lens, becoming focused, it gains the ability to interact with a particular thing that is conducive to being burnt. It is a symbol, it is not to be taken literally. But in the same way, the second that the Chaitanya becomes avachinna, becomes bordered, laid out, characterized by, limited by the antahkarana, it becomes a jiva, wherein then the jiva thinks this antahkarana is mine. The body that this antahkarana is attached to is mine. This is me, this is who I am, this is part of my identity. And then what happens is, this Chaitanya that existed alone without second before, ties its own identity to the lens and to the appendages of the lens that it passes itself through. Which is why in the second pada, it is prota, it is inextricably woven in to the tanu, to the bodies, starting from Brahma all the way up to an ant. The ant has the same Chaitanya enlivening it. Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma also has the same Chaitanya enlivening him. Only difference is the appendages surrounding the ant's body are different. The appendages that Chaturmukha Brahma's body has are different. But it is the same Chaitanya that lends life to both upadhis, be it an ant or be it Chaturmukha Brahma. So that is why the Prajnanam Brahma Mahavakya is very important, because it reminds us that whatever is experienced by the jiva, the experience is due to Brahman, which is our own nature, but is not of Brahman. As in, Brahman is not affected by the experience. But if not for Brahman, there would be no experience. So that is the point of this Mahavakya, and that is what Bhagavad Pada has very nicely brought out in this shloka. Now let us also quickly discuss this last pada, because it is one that has room for a lot of controversy. Let him be a Chandala, let him be a Dvija, he is a guru to me. So someone that has, basically we can take it to be someone that understands that I am this Brahman that is Prajnanam. Basically someone that has Brahmajnana. Aparoksha Brahmajnana, because then again we have to qualify that Brahmajnana is of two kinds. There is Paroksha Brahmajnana, wherein you read books, you read Shastras, you do logical study, philosophical study, and you have a good idea of what the system works like. You have an academic understanding of what Brahman is supposed to be like and what Brahmajnana is supposed to be like. That is called Paroksha Brahmajnana. Literally, Jnana of Brahma through someone else's indriyas. Aksha is indriya, right? Jnana of Brahman through someone else's senses. But that is not the end goal, and Paroksha Brahmajnana does not give moksha. It helps one on their path, but it does not give moksha. What we need is Aparoksha Brahmajnana. So you need to not only know that, or whether you know it or not, you need to be able to experience it. That is Aparoksha Brahmajnana. So for someone that experiences that oneness with the Brahman that is of the nature of Prajnana, or that is Prajnana, such a person, let him be a Chandala, let him be a Brahmana, he is my guru. Thus is my firm resolve. So this is what Bhagavad Pada is saying. Keep in mind that Bhagavad Pada has just said in this shloka that it is the same Chaitanya that is passing through Chaturmukha Brahma and an ant. Right? And then this shloka actually also ties into the very famous Bhagavad Gita shloka. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihaste Shunajeva Shvapakecha Panditas Samadarshinaha. Same thing there. This is a bit easier to understand if we look at the sense behind this. The reason is, as I said yesterday, the point of asking the questions that the Chandala did, and the reason why Maneesha Panchakam came into being is twofold. A, can Bhagavad Pada make the distinction between Vyavahara and Paramartha? That is, can he make the difference between transaction for the sake of the world and the ultimate or the supreme or the final true state of things? And secondly, to also show that Brahmajnana has no limitations. Brahmajnana can exist anywhere. A Chandala can be a Brahmajnani, a Brahmana can be a Brahmajnani, a Kshatriya can be a Brahmajnani, a Purusha can be a Brahmajnani, a Stri can be a Brahmajnani. There is no limit to who can have Brahmajnana or where Brahmajnana can pop up. So therefore, Bhagavad Pada is saying, regardless of whether he is a Chandala or a Dvija, meaning regardless of whatever his place in the transactional world may be. Right? Because the Chandala, at least in the story, right, the Chandala has a job. It's not like the Chandala is sitting there twiddling his thumbs. His job is to look after things in the cemetery. In that particular case, his job is to make sure that all the bodies are burned, disposed of. So he has a particular job in society. This Brahmana also has some particular job in society, doing Vedas, teaching Vedas, or learning Vedas, or doing yajnas, or helping people do yajnas or whatnot. They both have different jobs, right? And once you have different jobs, there will necessarily be a difference in the way that things are interacted with, not in a discriminatory sense, but just by fact of being, right? It is easier to see in the shloka from Gita, right? In that Bhagavan said, took upon the names of a cow, a dog, and an elephant. So he said that Panditas view all of these samadarshina. Panditas view these three equally: a cow, a dog, and an elephant. What does that mean? Treat them, views them equally. You can't feed all three of them the same way. You cannot get the same things from all three. You cannot expect the same things of all three. All three are not the same shape or size or of the same, they don't even exist in the same habitat sometimes. So what does this Samadarshanaha mean? It means that these Panditas, these Jnanis understand that it is the same Brahman within all these different upadhis. It does not mean that they will give the elephant a bone and the dog grass to eat. It does not mean that they will try to get milk from the dog and use the cow to guard their house. It does not mean that they will ride a cow into war and use an elephant in a yaga. Right? The cow will be used where a cow is used, a dog will be used where a dog is used, and an elephant will be used where an elephant is used. It also means that knowing that it is the same Chaitanya that enlivens all three animals, he will be treating all of those with a certain degree of respect as well. So he will be treating the dog in the way that the dog needs to be treated, without mistreating the dog, without maligning the dog. He will be treating the cow in the same way, in the way that a cow is supposed to be treated, without abusing the cow. He will treat the elephant in the way that the elephant is supposed to be treated, without abusing the elephant. Means no using the elephant in circuses. He will not be using the cow for slaughter. He will not be leaving the dog hungry out in the street. Right? So these all are part of what it means to be a Pandita. So you recognize the differences in that the world will necessarily demand of us, but yet you keep in mind that this is all one in its true nature, and that all are deserving, therefore, of equal respect. So the thing is, that is what it means. Chandalostu satudvijostu. And another thing, especially when it comes to Brahmajnana, because right, he's saying, whether the Chandala be the person with the Brahmajnana or the Brahmana be the person with Brahmajnana, both of them are gurus to me. Meaning, the second someone gets Brahmajnana, they become Brahman. We will get this in the last shloka. Brahmaiva na Brahmavit. So the second that jnana is attained, all other laukika vyavaharas do not hold as much importance to those people. I will talk about why I said that later. But Bhagavan says in jnana, nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitra viha vidyate. There is nothing that is more pure than jnana. Right? So the Chandala, if he has Brahmajnana, there is no one more pure than that Chandala. And of course, same goes for the Brahmana. And also, there is a part of Upanishad wherein once that Brahman is attained, there, by virtue of that Brahman being one without second, there is no chance of there being any dualities there. For example, there won't be anything such as a Chandala Brahmajnani versus a Brahmana Brahmajnani. Brahmajnani is one. There is only one Brahmajnani. All people that know Brahmajnana are shoehorned into that one entity because they have become Brahman by virtue of experiencing Brahman. So there it says, Yatra Deva Adeva Bhavanti, Yatra Veda Avedaha, Yatra Chandala, Yatra Shvapachaha Ashvapachaha, Yatra Chandalaha Achandalaha. So where the Vedas become not the Vedas, where the Devas become not the Devas, where a Chandala becomes not a Chandala, means Chandala and not a Chandala both are not there. Deva and Deva and Adeva both are not there. Veda and Aveda both are not there. The entire system of differences ceases to exist. But now we get a second question. So if this is the case, and knowing full well that this Chandala was a Brahmajnani, and also, of course, knowing that Bhagavad Pada also was a Brahmajnani, what was the point in Bhagavad Pada asking the Chandala to move away in the first place? Right? If both are Brahmajnanis and therefore both are as pure as can be, and if both know that, and if Bhagavad Pada is willing to say that and do namaskara to this Chandala saying, you are like a guru to me because you have Brahmajnana, then what was the point in asking the Chandala to step aside? This also is very easily answered if you look at the Gita. Loka sangrahamevartham sampashyan kartumarhasi. Utsideyirme loka nakuryam karmachedaham. Bhagavan says in several places that although the Brahmajnani himself has no need for these differences in transaction with the world, for the sake of the world itself, certain maryadas need to be followed. For example, if a Brahmajnani tells a lie, or does not tell a lie, or remains silent altogether, because the Brahmajnani has no more karmas to be experienced and cannot accrue more karma, it literally does not matter. However, if even a Brahmajnani tells a lie, it sets a bad precedent for the rest of the world that is existing in this transactional reality and therefore needs to follow certain rules. Which is why Krishna, Rama, all these avatars, regardless of them being avatars, still followed dharma to the dot. A lot of people say Krishna bent rules in Mahabharata. If you look at Mahabharata closely, you will not find a single incident where Krishna put a finger past the line of dharma. Nowhere in Mahabharata or in Bhagavata did Krishna ever cross the line of dharma. The reason being only one. Whatever Krishna does, the world will do. The world will say, because Krishna did that, I can do that. Because Rama did that, I can do that. Yadyadacharati shrestha tattadeve tarojanaha. Tayat pramanam kurute lokastadanavartate. Bhagavan, people say that regarding any good person, and Chris said regarding that. But in the Prakarana, if you look at the place where it occurs in the Gita, Bhagavan is actually referring to himself there. He says, I do these works because the world will look up to me. And then his reason for that is because whatever a good person does, the world will anuvartate, the world will follow that. So Bhagavan is actually talking about that in relation to himself in that situation. So because for us, right, for sannyasis that have not yet attained Brahmajnana, or for people that have, that are existing in this world, certain rules need to be followed. Does not mean that respect should not be maintained, but certain rules need to be followed. The rule goes that a sannyasi should not be touched, regardless of whatever the situation is. Sannyasis are never meant to be touched because their anushtanas are different, the food they eat is different, the life they lead is different, the practices they have are different. It does not matter if you're a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Stri, Purusha, Bala, Vriddha. Sannyasis are not supposed to be touched, which is why even today, a proper achara dictates that when you do namaskara to a sannyasi's feet, you either touch their padukas or you touch the ground in front of their feet. You're not supposed to touch their feet. Today, there are many so-called Peethadhipatis that wear orange and are kissing politicians and giving out hugs in public. We cannot speak for them. But as per Sampradaya, as per Shastra, sannyasis are not supposed to touch anyone. So there exists such a rule for the sannyasi. So because the sannyasi is not supposed to touch someone as per the Laukika Vyavahara, as per the Shastra that applies to the world, Bhagavad Pada was following that Sadachara. Which is why Bhagavad Pada in no place was disrespectful to the Chandala, and in also no place was the Chandala, dismissive of Bhagavad Pada. So that is the background behind Bhagavad Pada still following the Shastrachara. But the second that the Chandala shows that he has Brahmajnana, Bhagavad Pada not only gives him respect, but also is saying, you are a guru to me. Because the second someone has Brahmajnana, the upadhi no longer matters. The jnana is what is mukhya, the jnana is what is important, and all those jnanis are now Brahman. So that is the background, at least, of the last pada. The same will go for the coming shlokas and for the stotra as a whole. I think I've gone a bit longer than I wanted to, but I think we can open up the floor now for any questions. No, first I will address the questions in the chat, and then we can go to people that want to ask. Sleepwalking exists. That is true. Karmendriyas are active during sleep. However, keep in mind that we are talking about the relation of Chaitanya to the Indriyas. So in the Jagrada Avastha, the eye wants to see, and Chaitanya directs the eye to see, and the eye sees. In the same way, the ear wants to listen, and Chaitanya directs the ear to listen. In the same way, in Sapnavastha, when you have a dream, you see things in the dream, and Chaitanya is aware of that. It registers, right? Cognization of that happens. When sleepwalking happens, though, you are not cognizant of the walking. The body working is disconnected from the Chaitanya. So that is what we are talking about in that case. Why is there api after dridha prajna? So api is not always used to mean although. Sometimes it is just used to fill a letter. There is no special meaning for api. It just kind of exists to fill that one letter there. Ujrumbhate. Ujrumbhate means to spread, to widen, to fill across, something of that sort. To widen is a or to expand or to spread forth. Those are all good words for Ujrumbhate. So can I repeat Brahman Chaitanya, Ishvara Chaitanya plus Maya, Kutastha Chaitanya plus Avidya? Sorry, Kutastha is not Chaitanya plus Avidya. That is one thing. Chaitanya without the touch of Avidya. Jiva is Chaitanya with Avidya. So this is why the Shastric words become a bit important. Kutastha is Chaitanya, is Avidya Upahita Chaitanya. Jiva is Avidya Avachinna Chaitanya. So avachinna is used when something factors into the swarupa of an object. Upahita is used when the swarupa, when the lakshana does not factor into the swarupa of an object. For example, I don't know if I gave this example in the Sadhana Panchaka class, but if you say, right, you're giving someone directions to a house. You say, you see that house that the crow is sitting on. That house is the house of X. So you see the house that the crow is sitting on, and you start walking. As you walk to, the crow flies off and sits on the house next to it. You will not change the house that you are walking to. You will not switch the house that, to the other house. The reason being that although the lakshana given of the house is having a crow, that having a crowness does not factor into the nature of the object that you are being told to see. So in the same way, when avidya exists, but it does not exist as part of the object that we are referring to as kutastha, then it is called avidya upahita. But if you something like the house with red paint, right? In that case, the paint is part of the house, right? As you walk to the house, it will stay red. The red paint will not go anywhere. So then it is called avachinna. When the lakshana, when the quality is factored into the nature of the thing that you are qualifying, then that is called avachinna. So Chaitanya, Maya Upahita Chaitanya is Brahman, Maya Avachinna Chaitanya is Ishvara. In the same way, Avidya Upahita Chaitanya is the Kutastha, Avidya Avachinna Chaitanya is the Jiva. Chaitanya reflects in Antahkarana, creates Ahankara is a interesting term because Ahankara is always there. I know I worded it that way, I guess. Because Ahankara is always there. It is a question of Ahankara in reference to what? Because I-ness is always there. Chaitanya itself is I-ness. We will see later. Ahamityanta sphuta grihyate. So that whatever is saying I inside is the Chaitanya. But I would say creates Ahankara with respect to the body. I think that would be the more correct way of phrasing it. The term of those 6 dhatus where Jagrat is included. Not Jagrati, Jagrat is included. There is one sutra where it says Jakshityadaya Shat. You can look up that sutra in Ashtadhyayi. That will have those 6 dhatus. The last line, how does it fit with the first line? If the Chaitanya is same as me. Yes, samvit. First of all, samvit is strilinga, just pointing that out. So, ya samvit, sa eva ham. That should also be strilinga. So, first, he is saying, because the point is, the first part is meant to exemplify Prajnanam Brahma. The last line is meant to say, whoever has this jnana is a Brahmajnani and is therefore worthy of my worship. So these two things are what Bhagavad Pada wants to convey. Of course, he and the Chandala are also by nature the same Chaitanya, because in the Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanu, in all the bodies starting from Chaturmukha Brahma to the end, obviously in those bodies, Bhagavad Pada's body and the Chandala's body also are included. But the point of the shloka is the first 3 padas are meant to describe the state of someone who understands Prajnanam Brahma. And then the last pada and a half is meant to show that whoever is such a Brahmajnani or whoever has such an experience of Brahman, they are my Guru. So the differentiation is not what the non-differentiation is not what Bhagavad wants to bring out. Bhagavad wants to bring out the nature of that Brahmajnana and then the nature of such a Brahmajnani. Where to break in each of these padas. So now that we know what the words mean, I can tell you that. So Jagrat Sapna Sushuptishu Sphutatara Yasam Vid Ujrumbhate. So you can stop there. And then Ya Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanushu Prota. Right? Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanushu Prota is where the phrase goes, right? See, the thing is, once you know what the words mean, the stopping or not stopping will become, common sense. That which is woven across the bodies of everything. That is a place where you would naturally stop. You wouldn't say Tanushu, stop there and say Prota Jagat Sakshini. You would say Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanushu Prota Jagat Sakshini. Saivaham. That is what I am. I am Sa Eva Aham. Sa Samvideva Aham. I am that Samvid. Nacha Drishya Vastu. I am not a Drishya Vastu. Iti thas dridha prajnapi yasyasti chet. He, whoever has such a firm mindset, Chandalostu, let him be a Chandala, Satudvijostu, let him be a Dvija, Guru, who he is a Guru. Ityesha Maneesha Mama. Thus is my resolve. That is how you would stop. While Brahman is indivisible, while some jivas get Brahmajnana and get liberated without rebirth, and some jivas do not, isn't it some kind of differentiation between jivas? So this is actually a place where schools even within Advaita differ. So there is Eka Jiva Vada and Nana Jiva Vada. So are all jivas just one Chaitanya reflected through various mediums? Or, does each medium qualify as a different jiva? It is an ontological question that is there in the Darshana. But we can very simply say that Maya is what creates differences. Jivas, by definition, have Maya with them. So as long as Maya is there, there will be differentiation. It is as simple as that. Once you get jnana, that differentiation does not exist for you. It is that straightforward. Has anyone raised their hand? Ashok ji.
Namaskar, Mahodaya. Thank you for my.
Namaste.
Mahodaya, I have one question. That is, you explained that Paroksha Jnana, Paroksha Jnana. Paroksha Jnana is what we can read, study, understand. And
Paroksha Jnana is what we are doing right now. So an academic study of what is Brahman, A, B, C, D, right? Writing definitions, things like that is Paroksha Jnana. So, I can say, yes, Brahman is Satchidananda, I am Brahman. I can say that. And I can argue for any number of hours to prove it logically or whatnot. But that doesn't mean that I experience that I am Brahman.
So my question is that same only. That is when you say, I can understand what is learning and understanding. But experiencing means what means? What do you mean by experiencing really? Suppose I also feel.
For example, see, Brahman is said to be Nitya, right? It is permanent. Do you feel that you are permanent? I am guessing that none of us right now can say yes to that question. We still feel that we are the body, right? We have a beginning, we have an end. We fear death, we fear pain, we fear sorrow. Brahman is of the nature of Ananda. We are all very much with Dukkha. So we do not see, when we say, think that I am Brahman, it does not mean that think that my name is Brahman, because then you can just name your child Brahman and he will be good to go from birth. So we mean that, do you identify with what Brahman is supposed to be, what Brahman is? Because we have to give that thing a name, we called it Brahman, but Brahman itself is also just that, it is a label. Right? So thinking that I am experiencing Brahman is not just thinking that I am Brahman. It means experiencing what Brahman is supposed to be. That Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, all those qualities that are there, it is experiencing that. That is what sadhana is for.
What is experiencing or realizing? What does it mean?
Both are the same thing. Both are the same thing.
No, but experiencing means what exactly? I want to ask you.
Experiencing means how do you? I think realizing is an easier way of thinking about it. See, the thing is, it is a very tricky thing because it is our nature, right? The thing that we are learning about is our true nature that we are not aware of. So experiencing means we are thinking of ourselves and acting in a way right now that is not reflective of what our true nature is. Experiencing means existing as we would, knowing our true nature. That is what it is. That is the best way I can. That would be what experience. So, for example, an example that they give in Shastra is there was a prince that was abducted at birth. So he grows up in the forest not knowing that he is a prince. Until someone comes and tells him, you are now the king because your father has passed away. He does not know that he is a king. He is still the son of the king. He is still the heir to the throne. He is still, the Yuvaraja of a kingdom. But he does not experience that kingship until someone tells him that he is a king. So what did he get then? What did he start experiencing then that was not there before? He still has the same body, same mind and all of that. He just realized his quote-unquote true nature, and thereby he is able to go about things differently. That is kind of what experience.
You mean understanding fully? Is it like that?
Yeah, understanding fully. But the thing is, because, see, if understanding fully, yes, but if the object is separate from ourselves, we can say understanding it fully. When the object is ourselves, you will end up experiencing, right?
Difficult to understand, really.
No, you can only experience something that is part of you. You cannot experience something else, right? Which is why happiness, sorrow, pain, pleasure, all the things that we experience are us. We can say that I experienced, a smell, or that I experienced a sight, but you did not. You experienced your happiness or pleasure or your reaction. So experience happens when the thing is part of you, and that is what the samvit is referring to here. That part that lends itself to experience is what that samvit is.
Why I'm asking is, I do understand that Atma is same in all the creatures. Definitely it is same. It is the same God. But I have realized Atman means I don't understand. What is realization? What is experience? So it's something difficult to explain, I know. But I thought,
no, if I could explain that, I would be a Brahmajnani by now. Right. So I can, as I said, I can only give you the academic explanation. Obviously, I cannot tell you what that experience feels like, because I have not experienced it. If there is anyone listening that has experienced it, I request them to please teach the class from tomorrow, because they will do a better job than I can.
Dhanyavad.
Devika ji.
Namaskara Mahodaya, Ram. The class is very nice, Mahodaya, but I just want once again that the connection, Kutastha, that Avadya and Apachinna, can you just tell me once again, Mahodaya?
Upahita. So a Lakshana becomes Upahita when it is still a qualifying attribute, but it does not factor into the Swarupa of something.
Okay.
So as I said, the bird on the house.
Yes.
It becomes avachinna when it factors into the swarup of something, like the size of the house or the paint or something, house number or something.
Ram Mahodaya. But just as to say that in one of the earlier Upanishad class, he says when one student goes and asks, he says nobody can tell you how to experience the Brahman.
No, not just that. Even in Kathopanishad, right? Naisha tarkena matirapadeya, right? This is not something that you can, sit down and logic your way into. Logic will only help you insofar as you can say, yes, this holds up with reality. But logic will not help you to actualize that. That is the situation.
So Mahodaya, this now it is Kudastha will be. What are the combination? So it is a combination of avidya and apahita.
Avidya, upahita, chaitanya. Upahita just refers. It's just telling you what's the relationship.
Everything is chaitanya. Okay.
So the
avidya, upahita, chaitanya is
the kutastha is, so the kuta actually is a goldsmithing term. So in a goldsmithing shop, right, he will hammer out the pieces of gold or silver on a particular flat surface, right? He will put it and then hammer the gold into whatever shape he wants. So the gold comes and goes, but the surface that he does it on does not change. That surface is called kuta.
Okay.
So in the same way, as the jiva experiences various things, as the jiva interacts with various things, as the jiva goes through happiness, sorrow, sukha, dukkha, kopa, harsha, all that, the chaitanya that remains unchanging underneath is what is called avidya upahita chaitanya, or the kuta.
Okay.
Okay. Nalini ji.
Namaste, Mahodaya. So, in Jagrat, Swapna, Susuptishu, Samvid Asti iti. So, how do we... so, in Jagrat, awakened state, we are able to process things, and that's what we call it as intelligence, is what we refer to Brahman, is it? And in the deep sleep state, all the organs are functioning, and that's why we say, in all these states, the jnana is there. Is it? Is that what it means?
Close. So Samvit, literally, as you said, intelligence is one way of putting it. Cognizance, I think, is another way of putting it. So in Jagrata Avastha, we cognize very obviously, right? We are acting with the world, we understand, you're saying, I am seeing, I am smelling, I am touching. Same is there in Sapna, right? We say, I had a dream, right? And in the dream also, we think that I am smelling, I am seeing, I am touching, etc. Sushupti is a bit more of a complex case because once all the karanas are removed, there are no indriyas that are working with Chaitanya during Sushupti. But even though those are not working, what remains is Brahman and Avidya. The Atma and Avidya remain. So because the Atma is veiled by Avidya, during Sushupti, we are not aware that we are cognizant. But then how do you know that you are cognizant during Sushupti? Because you wake up and you say, I was sleeping well, or I was in a deep sleep. So because when you wake up, you're able to recognize that you slept. You're recognized, right? You're able to recognize that you were sleeping. Then it follows that you were cognizant then. So that is how you arrive at the fact that Samvit is still there in Sushupti also. And then because it is there across all three, it is unbroken, etc., etc. Okay.
Oh, okay. Another question. You said everything is classified into a drishya vastu and
Drik or drishya, everything will fall into one of these two. Yeah.
Correct. So the drishya vastu does not have any chaitanya in it, or we don't call that as Brahman. How is
it
that?
It is a maya karya. It is not sato chetana, as in it is not inherently sentient or inherently cognizant.
Inherently cognizant.
For example, if you look at a pot, right? There is, in this relationship, there is one thing that is capable of performing the function of seeing and one thing that is just the object of being seen. Right.
Correct.
So, and another way of looking at it is, with or without anything else, we are aware of our existence. Unless we look at something else, we are not aware of anything else's existence. So the pot does not shine on its own. It needs to be illuminated by an outside source. Whereas our own Chaitanya does not need to be illuminated by another source. It shines of its own accord. Shines means it becomes known of its own accord. It is experienced of its own accord. The pot is not experienced unless it is illuminated or unless it is made to be experienced by something else. Whereas Atma is experienced without being made to be experienced. That is the difference.
So the Sarvam Brahmamayam. So I thought every entity that we see, the seer or even the thing that is seen, like the stone or the gata, so all that was not Brahman because it does not have the capability to perceive. Is that what we say then?
So that is in a different sense, right? So everything is Brahman in the sense that Brahman is the underlying reality that everything else derives its reality from. Right? Because see, Brahman is Nitya, so some pot is obviously Anitya. So then if we say that the pot is Brahman and the pot breaks, then what happened to Brahman being Nitya? So what we say when the pot is Brahman means the pot's existence is derived from Brahman's existence. In the same way that if you see a rope and think it is a snake, the snake's existence is derived from the rope's existence. But the snake is not a rope, obviously. The snake is not real, nor is the snake a rope. So in the same way, the Jagat's existence is derived from Brahman, or the Jagat is Brahman in true nature. But the Jagat, insofar as we experience it, is not Brahman.
Okay. Okay. So if we derive
did I explain or confuse you? Did I confuse you more, or did I clear?
Definitely, I'll need more time to think, Mahodaya. Definitely, I'm not eligible to. But yeah, the question. But
we should not think like that. We should not think that we are not eligible to learn something. See, because these are all, as I said, these are all academic things, right? If you want, I will explain it again. So let us take the snake rope example.
No, I understand this much what you said. You are saying, if something is derived from something, like if the snake is derived from the rope, so the snake and rope are different, is what you're trying to, you are basically saying.
They're different, but they're also the same, right? The snake does not exist outside the rope. The snake does not exist without the rope. So they're the same insofar as the snake is the rope, but they're different because the snake is not the rope is not in actuality a snake. So it is a very fine line to draw between those two. These are what are called khyativadas. So how does misperception happen? Misperception of the same thing. You see a shell, you think it is silver. You see a rope, you think it is a snake. So there are various theories by various darshanas on how this misperception happens. That is another story on its own.
Yeah, I need some time to digest this information, I think.
Yeah. No problem.
Dhanyavad.
Okay, as we are, I think, 15 minutes over time, then I'll try to quickly go through the ones that I have missed in the chat. Since in Sushupti Avastha we are only Brahman, wouldn't one try to stay in this Avastha always? That is actually a very enticing offer. But in Sushupti, we are Brahman, but we are not aware that we are Brahman. That is true. Because the avidya aspect is still there. Avidya has not been thrown off. Right? So Sushupti is as close to Brahman as we can get, but it is still with that layer of avidya over the Brahman. In Saundarya Lahari, Yati is after 6 syllables unless it's a samastapada. Is that not followed in this chandas? So in first one, Saundarya Lahari is Shikharani chandas. So Rasai Rudresh Chinna. So Shikharani is broken at the 6th and then 11th letters. And this is Shardula, which is broken after the 12th letter. So as you can see here, Jagrat Sapna Suruptishas Photatara. There's a break. Yasam Vidujramhate Brahmadi Velidanta Tanushu Prota Jagat Sakshini Saivaham Nacha Drishya Vastviti Dradha. Even within the samasa, the word broke. Prajna Pyasyas Dijet, etc. So that is still followed. No problem. Okay, so I think that is a good place to stop for today. You are all asking nice questions. Hopefully you are enjoying the class. Tomorrow we will look at the Yajurveda Mahavakya Aham Brahmasmi and the second shloka of Maneesha Panchakam. Ityesha Vangmayi Puja Shrimat Shankarapadayur Arpita Tena Devesha Priyata Me Sadashiva Tava Tattvanna Janami Kidrishosi Maheshwara Yadrishosi Mahadeva Adrishaya Namo Namaha. Ram Ram.